Welcome to the Halloween Quadruple feature. I decided to do something interesting for Halloween because I haven't really reviewed a lot of horror movies this year. I mean, I did Antebellum and Hubie Halloween, but that's about it. I haven't really done that much in terms of horror and Halloween movies. So to make up for it, I watched 4 movies this week, and I'm going to give my short reviews for each of them. First off, Babysitter's Guide to Monster Hunting, which is directed by Rachel Talalay and stars Tamara Smart along with Tom Felton. This movie tells the story of Kelly, a young babysitter who must team up with a group of monster hunters to save her charge who has been kidnapped by the boogeyman. I did not know a lot about this franchise, this story, going into it. Apparently it's based off a book series, but I've never read it. Going into it, I didn't have high expectations, but I thought the story was interesting sounding. It sounded like a good premise. But after watching it, I thought it was just kind of average. This movie, I think, has a problem that a lot of movies based off books or book series, is that a word, have had over the years, which is they try to set up too much in the first movie. You can tell they're trying to make a franchise here, but I don't know if that's going to really work. It really depends on how well this movie does. I'm not really sure how many people have watched it since it dropped, but based off this movie, I'm not super interested in watching more. This movie does have some good lessons for kids. It's about facing your fears, and you see that literally happening in this movie where the boy that Kelly's supposed to be watching has to learn to face his fear in order to stop everything that's happening. But besides that, everything else is kind of by the book. There is some interesting lore that they kind of sneak in there, but then there's also moments where they're really like explaining everything. It's a lot of exposition. This is this, this is that. Like the characters keep explaining things to each other, but there's not a lot of showing. There's mostly just them telling you what's happening or what has happened in the past or whatever. Tom Felton, I thought was okay as a villain. I think he was a lot creepier towards the beginning, but then after a while, it just got goofy, and I didn't take him as seriously as the boogeyman. You're supposed to be really scared of this guy, and I think the effects and stuff, the makeup towards the beginning, did that really well. But as he gets more into the character, you see more of who he is. He's not as scary, at least for me. I mean, I'm an adult, of course, but just as a villain, I don't think he was as terrifying as he could have been. I understand it's supposed to be like a kid's movie, but I feel like they could have pushed it a little more. Also, I don't think they go too in-depth with the characters. There's not a lot of development. Like I said, it's a lot of telling you, not showing you. And I don't feel like I cared that much for the characters. Maybe more so Kelly because I spend the most time with her, and Liz because that's the person she's with most of the time. But everybody else was just kind of there. I wasn't totally invested in the characters and the story. At the end, it's very obvious they're trying to set up another movie talking about the next villain. But I don't think they developed this villain in this movie enough for me to be interested in another one. The verdict. I think Babysitter's Guide to Monster Hunting is I. Next up, Bad Hair. Bad Hair is directed by Justin Simien and stars Ella Lorraine and Vanessa Williams. This takes place in the late 80s and tells the story of a woman named Anna who's trying to make it big in the world of music television. She's pressured by her superiors to get a weave, and things take a turn for the worse. I saw the trailer for this movie on Twitter, and it looked kind of weird to me, but I was willing to give it a chance because I am happy to see more black horror in the mainstream, right? But after watching it, I think this was a really weird movie. And I mean, I wasn't totally sold on the concept either, but I was still willing to give it a chance. But now that I've watched it, it was just really out there. I think my biggest problem with this movie is that it doesn't really know what it wants to be. Yes, it's a horror movie, but I don't think it can totally decide whether it wants to be a serious, scary horror movie or a goofy B horror movie that you can kind of make fun of with your friends, like a cheesy horror movie. It really just goes back and forth between the two. I think in terms of themes, they were sort of onto something here because it was talking about how black women have to change their appearance in order to be able to get higher positions in the corporate world and stuff. Like, I think that's a really interesting message, and that's something that's still happening today, but I don't think that was fully fleshed out. And then when we get into the horror elements, it just goes crazy. The third act of this movie is absolutely bonkers. I do think this is a good horror movie to watch with your friends. I mean, I know you can't do it now because, pandemic, but I do think this was a great one to watch if you wanted to sit there, get drunk with your friends, and just laugh and like make fun of it. But as a horror movie, I don't think it's that scary at all. In terms of the themes, I don't think they really explored it that well. They did try to have a message to it, but that message I think got lost in all the weird, cheesy CGI, crazy demon hair flopping all over the place, people getting randomly killed for no reason. I feel like all that stuff took away from whatever message they're trying to give to this movie, and ultimately, I don't think I would watch this again unless, like I said, I was watching with friends, we were all getting drunk and just making fun of it the whole time. I think that's what this movie is good for, but otherwise, I don't think I'd be revisiting it. The verdict. I think bad hair is weak sauce. Hashtag Alive was directed by Il Cho and stars An Yu and Chin-Ye Park. Hashtag Alive tells the story of a gamer who's trapped in his apartment during a zombie apocalypse. This, I think, was a great horror movie for 2020. I mean, it kind of reflects what's actually happening in the world, but it gives you enough escapism for you to separate reality from what's happening in the movie. This was a really solid horror movie. I like the contained nature of it. A lot of it takes place in this apartment complex, in this apartment, in this room with the main character, and you're seeing him dealing with this isolation, being essentially quarantined like a lot of people were this year. Seeing him deal with all the news that's coming out, wondering if his family's still alive out there. All this stuff happening. You see what happens when he has to deal with getting food and water. These are all crazy things that happen. And then on top of that, we have the zombies. These zombies, I think, do set themselves apart from previous iterations of zombies in other movies and shows because, one, they're actually intelligent. They remember things from when they were human, so they know how to open doors, and they do remember some actions and motions that they did either in their career or just in their life in general, which I think is a nice twist to it. But also the way they move was really interesting. I mean, it kind of has a fast-paced nature to it, but also there's sort of a like bone crunching, like kind of like robotic almost in a way, which I thought was really interesting. The way they moved was like they kind of stuttered for a second and then they speed at you. I thought that was really cool, and I think that made them a lot more terrifying than the normal zombies we'd see in most movies. There's also a lot of creative problem solving, and they do it in a way, again, that makes it feel a lot like a 2020 movie. You see the gamer vlogging to try and send a message out to his followers. There's also a trend on their equivalent to Instagram where you see people holding up signs that say where they are, where their location is, so a rescue team can come get them. There's also times where the main character might use his drone to try and spy around the area to see if there's zombies in different floors of the apartment complex. Stuff like that, I think, makes this movie feel a lot more grounded and realistic because this is stuff that's happening kind of now, again, where a lot of people are stuck at home because they can't go outside or else they could possibly get sick. But I thought this was really a fun movie. There's a good amount of action, drama, a lot of character, a lot of heart, and I definitely think this is worth checking out this Halloween. The verdict. I think hashtag Alive is solid. And last but not least, Love and Monsters. Love and Monsters was directed by Michael Matthews, and it stars Dylan O'Brien and Jessica Henwick. Love and Monsters follows the adventures of Joel, who goes on an 85-mile journey through monster-infested territory to reunite with an old flame. This was another fun... It's not really a Halloween movie, this is more just a monster movie, but it still fits because it released in October and it's about monsters and scary things, so it fits. But this was a fun movie, great adventure. Dylan O'Brien did great in his role as Joel. You see his journey of becoming an actual fighter, a survivor in this world infested with monsters. He starts off very timid and he freezes up against monsters, but over time, through his journey, you see him grow as a person and become more self-sufficient. You also have a lot of side characters that really make this a heartfelt journey. There's Michael Rooker playing Clyde, who has this little girl with him. They're really sweet, and their relationship with Joel, they kind of teach him the ropes, and I think that worked really well. The dog Boy, who stole the show, honestly, for me. Like, every scene he was in, absolutely great. And then there's his relationship with Jessica Henwick's character, Amy, who is the girl he's trying to find through his journey. All of these relationships, I think, add a lot to the heart of the movie, and it really tugs at your heartstrings. Even though this is supposed to be like a big monster movie, big action movie, I found it was surprisingly wholesome and heartfelt. I really was cheering for this guy to make it all the way there. And when things go wrong, you really feel kind of scared for him. You're like, oh my gosh, I hope he survives. Because if this doesn't work out for him, you'd feel so bad because you see how hard he's trying to get back to this girl. One thing I did notice, though, I don't know if this would be considered a nitpick, but Joel has a crossbow, right? And he has a set of arrows. But throughout his journey, he seems like he always has arrows, even though you see him practicing and shooting at trees and other things. But he always seems to have arrows. He never runs out. I thought that was weird. But otherwise, I think this movie was really fun. Really great monster movie, and it also, again, speaks to what 2020 is like because you're seeing a lot of people living in isolation, hiding from these monsters, and the theme of the movie is you can't live in fear and you have to go out and live your life out in the world and face whatever dangers are out there. Now, that is a good message, but I don't think you should 100% take it to heart at this stage of the pandemic and stuff. Like, you can still go out and do stuff, but don't go crazy. That's all I'll say. The verdict. I think Love and Monsters is a great time. So there you go, that is the Halloween Quadruple feature. Have you seen any of these movies? Let me know what you thought of them down in the comments. Also, let me know if you like this format. Should I do this again next year? Let me know all of that down in the comments. Also, don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.